Beat with Dr. Benita Zahn.
And good evening, and welcome to this special edition of Health Beat. We're talking all things COVID-19 vaccine. Now, granted, the rollout has been anything but smooth. I did reach out to the state health department, but was told they didn't have anybody available to join in this discussion. So we won't be dealing with the difficulties in getting a vaccine appointment. Rather, we're going to be addressing questions you have about the vaccine. You can post your questions on our Facebook page. I'm going to be monitoring so I can get all your questions in. Have a great panel of experts for you. Dr. Eric Yeager, a microbiologist and assistant professor at the Albany College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. Give us a little wave there, Doc. There we go. Also with us, Dr. Cindy Serro-Conlon. She's an anesthesiologist at Glens Falls Hospital. Good to have you with us. Dr. Joe Bertino is a clinical pharmacologist and editor of the Journal of Clinical Pharmacology. And Keith Brown is the interim public health director for Schenectady County Public Health Services. Good to have you as well. I want to start with this, okay? What is this vaccine? And by this, I mean the one created by Pfizer-BioNTech and the one made by Moderna. They're similar, but they're from, they're very different from the vaccines we're familiar with. So I guess, Eric, give us the quick 411 on what are these mRNA vaccines that are out there now.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Benita, for the invite and the first question. So these messenger RNA vaccines are a new platform. They're new to us out in the clinic, but they have been studied for decades. And the virus that we've known as COVID-19 has been studied for a long period of that family of viruses for a long period of time. So with that knowledge, we're able to create these vaccines in a rather rapid fashion, rapid, not rushed. And the messenger RNA vaccine is simply the blueprint for a viral protein that we can deliver to our cells. Our cells have that machinery. We're making our own messenger RNA and our own proteins on a daily basis. All of us right now on this panel are making proteins. So the way this vaccine works is you deliver the blueprint, our body makes the viral protein, and it educates our immune system to what the virus would look like once we're exposed to it. So we'll be protected against that exposure to that virus.
Now, I had a question from a viewer the other day in advance of this. Can this vaccine give you coronavirus?
So this vaccine cannot give you coronavirus. It does not contain live virus or anything of viral origin, the viral proteins. So it's not like perhaps the flu vaccine some people may have gotten. Other older vaccines or traditional vaccines are made by taking the pathogen, like a virus, and killing it or inactivating it. Here, we're just giving the blueprint for a viral protein. So while you may experience some side effects of the vaccine, and the side effects really, it's kind of a misnomer, it's your immune system being kicked into high gear to respond to that vaccine. So the effects you're seeing after getting the vaccine might seem similar to some of the symptoms you might experience with COVID, but you are not infected with COVID-19 by the vaccine.
If you have had COVID-19, one, should you get the vaccine? And two, might you have a different set of responses? Might how you feel afterwards be different than somebody who never had it? Go ahead, anybody, go ahead, jump in.
I can take it. Oh, good. Sorry, just go ahead.
So in the clinical trials for the Moderna vaccine, which enrolled about 40,000 people, about 2% of patients were antibody positive for COVID at entry into the study. And actually, the incidence of side effects was less in the group that got the vaccine than patients who were antibody negative. Now, I realize that's a small sample, but I think at this point, we're pretty comfortable in saying people that have been infected can safely get the vaccine.
All right, well, Joe, let me jump in. Angela just messaged and she said that she took the first shot and she still got COVID because clearly you're not fully protected. Does she still take the second shot? It is scheduled.
Yes, we do.
You do?
And I'd be curious to know what the time course was. I have a colleague who got a COVID vaccine, and 2 days later, he developed COVID. Well, he didn't develop COVID due to the vaccine. It turned out he was exposed a week earlier to a server at a restaurant. So time is important.
Yeah, and that's part of the issue, is that you may in fact be infected already get the shot, but you hadn't been exhibiting any symptoms until perhaps sometime after you got the vaccine, which raises the question some folks have also asked, what if you only get one shot? You know, they're opening it up now, and there's this whole issue about get as many people to have one shot, and that's worried about the second down the road. The research was done on 2 shots. Anybody jump in? What do you think about this one shot?
Well, you know, the data for the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine is 2 injections. After the first injection, by 3 weeks or 4 weeks, depending on what the vaccine interval is, the protection is only about 50%. It drops down. Again, first injection stimulates the immune system. The second injection causes it to remedy. That's what you want. I think that the thought now is that companies are going to ramp up production so that they can release all of that, government can release all the vaccine, give people the first injection, and then there will be more vaccine available for people who get the second injection.
Yeah, because that's been an ongoing concern as well. I'm wondering, somebody asked that the husband had a quadruple bypass a year ago. Should he be getting the vaccine? Is there any concern about someone like that taking the vaccine?
Yeah, he needs to get it. It's a high risk.
Yeah, everybody's nodding in agreement, so go and get that. You know, have a conversation with your doc. But Patty, panel says get the vaccine, high risk as well. Allergic reactions. What's the 411 on that?
Well, we think it's the polyethylene glycol that are in the vaccines is one of the culprits, and these reactions have been known to PEG for a long time. In fact, we just got a paper submitted in the Journal of Clinical Pharmacology, a series of cases of PEG reactions, both in given parenterally and by mouth. PEG is used in a lot of different preparations, oral drugs as well as parenteral drugs, intravenous, intramuscular drugs.
Okay. Have that conversation. Dr. Sarah Conlon, mask after getting the vaccine, getting, both. There are folks that are wondering, why do you still have to wear a mask if you get both shots?
That's a good question. There are a number of reasons. Number one, immunity is not immediate after the vaccine. Clearly, we think that you need more than one shot. That's what the data show at this point. Secondly, getting the vaccine does not protect against contracting COVID. It protects against serious illness in 95% of patients who do contract it. And the other question that remains unanswered is that we don't know if I've been vaccinated and I've been exposed, I may not be ill, but we don't know yet whether I can still transmit that to other people. So the basic tenets that you've been hearing for the last year, wash your hands, wear a mask, remain 6 feet apart, those things continue to hold after vaccination.
So you can still get sick with COVID, you just won't get as sick?
Correct.
Even after getting both shots?
Yes.
That's something that folks need to keep in mind. Yeah. Keith, in your community, and Schenectady County, there's money, there isn't money. You've got a wide range of folks who have to get the message and then have to get the shot. How does a county like yours craft a plan to make sure that this happens?
Yeah, for us, the number one thing is to partner with our community. So early on, for instance, when we started doing community-wide COVID testing, we convened a group of leaders from the faith community, community organizers, activists, and other people to talk about disparities in COVID-19, right? So we know that, like every other health issue, we know that COVID-19 disproportionately impacts Black and Indigenous people of color. There are definitely, economic and other kind of lines here. And so for us, it was really important that that group of people, that people who have deep ties to the community, were actually driving the process rather than serving some token advisory role or something. Those are the people who decided how we should roll out testing, where those sites should be, how we should engage with the community about it, and then those credible messengers really spread the word about our testing efforts. And so right now, as we're trying to roll out vaccines, it's a very similar process. So we've been in touch with people from the community to volunteer our pod sites so that people might see somebody that they know when they come in, which right now is important. And for us, it's going to get even more important as we move into the following phases where we're going to be talking about the general public. And we know people have concerns and there are historic reasons for that. And we need to have credible messages and people that are trusted in the community to be able to help us roll that out.
Yeah, I know that in Glens Falls, it's a similar kind of situation across the board. And then it's, getting to this community and getting that community to the sites where they can get a shot, because not everybody has wheels, and that's its own challenge. Had a question from somebody who said that they were, what if you have you have the disease, but you're asymptomatic, still get the shot? And I think we sort of covered that, but the answer to that would be still get the shots?
Yes.
Okay, we're there. Wherever you get your first shot, do you have to go back to the same place?
Yes, you do.
And who's going to make sure that that happens? There's conflicting information that we're hearing on that. Some sites will let you know, other sites go, yeah, that's your problem. Yeah.
Well, we're actually required as a vaccine administration site to schedule the second dose when people get the first dose. So while there were some fits and starts in the early days of vaccine rollout, where some of the databases and other things weren't set up that way, right now, for us, when people get their first dose, they get an appointment to come back. For us, we're using Moderna, so it's 28 days later. So people get an appointment for 28 days later to come back for their second dose.
What's the difference between the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer-BioNTech? Because they're both mRNA, Eric, as you pointed out, but one you don't have to keep as cold, one's a 4-week, one's a 3-week. What's the difference between them?
The difference really is the messenger RNA, and that's the main component of the vaccines, is the same. They're encoding the same protein. The difference is in the other formulation and how it's being delivered, and the substance that causes an irritation in your immune system to jumpstart your response to the vaccine. So there is a slight difference. The efficacy has been reported. It's pretty close, and their utility in the populations is the same. But as Keith mentioned, the important thing is when people get the vaccine, they get that card, and the card indicates which vaccine they received, and importantly, going back to the same site. These vaccines are not, even though it seems a little confusing, they're mRNA. Why can't I get Moderna one day and then Pfizer 21 or 28 days later? Currently, we cannot interchange those. You have to get the same vaccine the second time. So as you mentioned previously, kind of can we give one dose? Can we change the timing? Can we interchange them? And right now the answer is no. I think as Joseph mentioned, like the clinical studies were pretty clear and having guide rails for get this vaccine either 21 or 28 days later, use the same vaccine, and then we can assure that you'll reach that level of protection.
Lori asks, and the online questionnaire, when you sign up for the vaccine, they ask if you're on blood thinner, and they want to know why.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Did I just stump everybody?
Yeah.
I mean, potentially you could be at a higher risk of bleeding from the injection, but I'm guessing maybe they're looking for something a little more serious, like a condition that would cause you to be immunocompromised, in which case they may have some, cautionary statements or measures with the vaccine.
Yeah, and they also wonder if it's because whether you're told to take aspirin or Tylenol afterwards. And if that plays into it as well. But Lori couldn't get an answer from anybody, so it's one of those. That's
We're in good company then.
Little difficult. And then Lori also asked, and some other folks did. There's concern. Again, it goes back to something we talked about a few minutes ago. If we're trying to get, the government is trying to get as many people to get the first shot as possible. What's to say shot number 2 will be available when you're due to get it? And Keith, you may want to jump in here. I see you nodding.
Yeah. So thus far, the state is actually holding on. So the federal government and the state are holding on to the same number of doses that get shipped out for second doses. So the way it works for us is that as we administer our first doses, those are calculated and retained by the state so that when it's time for us to do the second doses, we'll get, for example, we've been doing about 600 administrations a week here at Schenectady County Public Health Services. And so the 600 that we do in that given week, during the week that's 28 days later, we'll get an additional 600 on top of the new 600 that we'll be administering. So, so the state's accounting for that, the federal government's accounting for that. What we don't know yet is that with this signal of a shift in approach to release all of the doses, what we don't know is whether there's an indication that ramp up in manufacturing has somehow, you know, backfilled that, or whether the plan right now is to get that in as many arms as possible. Again, from a public health perspective, you know, it does make some sense to get twice as many people some level of immunity given the numbers we're seeing right now. But again, you know, the data is on 2 doses. So all the research that was done, the approval, it's all based on this 2-dose approach. So, so like other panelists have said, and most people know, there are things we don't know about the duration of immunity, the level of immunity after a few weeks if you don't get the second dose. So, I think we'll know more as we move forward. But the idea is that we want to get as many people vaccinated as possible, obviously, but it is important that we have a plan for those second doses.
Yeah.
And I'd like to chime in and add that I think the common misconception right now, the bottleneck in terms of getting people vaccinated has not been the supply of vaccine. It instead has been the infrastructure and the mechanism, as you say, to get shots in arms. So right now, that's really where the focus has been and needs to be. The supply at this point has been more than adequate.
I've got a question from Joanne. Can you get the vaccine if you've got Graves' disease and or if you have Lyme disease?
Yes.
Yeah, there are very few contraindications to receiving the vaccine. Folks with debilitating, serious chronic conditions are exactly who we aim to protect. They're the most vulnerable populations, and so that's exactly who these vaccines are designed for. These are the folks who should be near the front of the line.
And Becca wants to know, she got her first Moderna shot last week, and she's going to need a cortisone injection next week. Is that a contraindication, or is that all okay?
No, you know, the corticosteroid or cortisone injection won't hold over until her next dose of the Moderna vaccine in 2 weeks. So, and you know, it's, I assume she means she's going to get a cortisone injection either in her spine or in a joint or something like that. So maybe our anesthesiologist here does some pain management, and so she may able to speak more to that. But
I don't, but I read about it once. So, you know, corticosteroids affect your immune response. They also affect things like your blood sugar. So there are lots of kind of systemic effects. In terms of a reaction to the vaccine, they really shouldn't interfere with each other, and it shouldn't interfere with your ability to build immunity from the vaccine. Certainly, don't take my word for it. Speak to your doctor with whom you have a relationship, who you trust, and certainly they'll be able to give you better advice.
I know we talked a little before about you go to the same place for your second shot as you got your first shot. Keith, you mentioned that. Jill wants to know, though, if you got the first one in Saratoga County, and it sounds like she's got a trip down to Florida planned, can she get her second shot down there? And the answer is?
No. She is supposed to go back to the place where she got her first dose. That's been pretty clear from the state. And my guess is that if she showed up somewhere in Florida and said, I need my second dose, again, think about what I mentioned earlier about how there's a very prescribed allocation of the doses. So Saratoga County is planning on doing her second dose. So that's been calculated and allocated for them. So wherever she is in Florida is not going to have a second dose for her. So she has to go back. We've already had this question from a few people on the front end where they've said, well, should I hold off on getting my first dose because I have a trip planned? And our response is you can either cancel your appointment now and wait and do it at another time, or you can cancel your travel plans or make arrangements to get back here. But you have to get back to to the place that administered your first dose.
There's a lot of concern and confusion over how do you get in line to get the vaccine. Joe, you and I were talking about that today, and most folks are funneling into the state hotline. If you can get somebody on the phone or on the website, you go there. Can you call directly to a pharmacy that you know is going to or is already administering these shots, or do you have to be cleared, if you will, go through the clearinghouse that's the state?
So I can cover this if you want, or go ahead, Joe.
Well, I can only relate my own personal experience with trying to do this, is that you have to fill out the form and find out if you're eligible or not. And then there are phone numbers to call pharmacies. I, for fun, just tried to call and basically didn't get a person to talk to. And trying to schedule with the state places was challenging. Scheduling it over the phone with someone was even more challenging. So it's not easy, but please, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. And to Cindy's point from before, while we know that the federal government seems to have enough vaccines to start rolling this out, the real choke point for us at the local and regional level is the number of vaccines coming in. So you've heard from Governor Cuomo that
Keith, we're having a little trouble hearing you right. Keith? We're just having I think we're having a little connection. Keith, we're just having a little connection issue. We just sort of lost your audio. It got very, very low. I'm going to come back to you if once we get that boosted. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. Also, there was the other question that ran through a number of these is there's been the concern, so I suppose this is the myth-busting part of it. Boy, we got this done very quickly, and how safe would this vaccine be because you did it so, not you, the companies did it so fast. Let's talk a little bit about that. We got about 2 more minutes here.
Yeah, I think the clinical trials that were done, I think it was fast, but it was not rushed. I think they were done in a very rigorous fashion like all clinical trials are. And I think the couple things were, there was some fortuitousness that we had the mRNA very quickly after the virus was identified. Additionally, with the Operation Warp Speed, there's a lot of finances and resources put in behind so companies could start to manufacture before the results were known. And then second, often with clinical trials, it takes time to enlist volunteers. And there was such an urgency and demand and interest in this vaccine that they were able to meet their population for the studies rather quickly. And unfortunately, there was COVID in the community, so they could have groups that were infected by COVID and determine the efficacy. Mm-hmm. So it is definitely, it's a scientific marvel, if you will, that we've gotten a vaccine so quickly. But really, it's gone through safety protocols. It's gone through review boards, people that aren't associated with the government or companies, independent review boards. So there's a good indication of its safety and efficacy. And that data collection doesn't stop after it goes in someone's arm. So some of you in the audience that may have gotten it, there's a V-Safe app where you can go in and indicate how you're feeling after the shot. So they're collecting a whole bunch of data because we do need data on kind of long-term efficacy and any kind of indications that might happen after a shot.
Yeah. Rebecca says if COVID-19 vaccine isn't a cure, and it's not we're not talking cure, we're talking preventative, but if it's not a cure, why take it? People can continue to wear the mask, wash their hands, social distancing. Let's just get a little bit more granular in that because it's not a cure. A cure is after the horses are out, we make you feel better. This is something that will prevent you from becoming very sick. Is that really the essence of what's going on here?
Right.
It is, and potentially even you may still be able to transmit it to another person, but the viral load or the dose of the virus that you're transmitting per se will likely be significantly less if you even can transmit it. And we don't know that yet. But the reason to get it is that people die from COVID. And you know, hopefully as more and more arms get vaccinated, fewer people will die and we'll gain our lives back.
Mm-hmm. And Keith, let's see if we can hear you. You had started talking about calling directly to a pharmacy. Oh. You there, Keith? No, and now I think we've lost Keith totally, but boy, he sure added a lot to the conversation. We've got 2 minutes left here, and I think, Joe, I'm putting you on the hot seat again. Some folks are still not really clear on the whole issue about an allergic reaction and an anaphylactic reaction, and what might cause this, who is at greater risk for this, if you can give us sort of the thumbnail on it.
Yeah, first of all, I think people should know that the incidence of severe allergic reactions with both vaccines, even millions of doses that have been administered, is very, very low. Components in the vaccines, and once again, I'll go back to one of the main ones, polyethylene glycol, that a very tiny percentage of people may have allergic reactions to it. However, many people have probably already been exposed to polyethylene glycol. So, for example, if you had a colonoscopy, you probably drank polyethylene glycol as part of the prep to get ready for your colonoscopy. So unless you know that you have this reaction, anaphylaxis, or severe allergic reaction, which is anaphylaxis, to something like polyethylene glycol, there's no problem with taking the vaccine. And again, I think this has been overplayed in the media, and Benita, you know, I've said that to you.
Yes.
Very small, tiny percentage of people that have gotten vaccines worldwide have had a severe allergic reaction.
Mm-hmm. And Joe, Sally wants to know if you're allergic to the TB vaccine, can you get the COVID vaccine? And I don't think she really means the vaccine. Probably she means if you had a big reaction to a TB test.
To a TB test.
TB, tuberculosis. You know, the time test?
Yeah, no, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get the vaccine, yes.
You can. Okay, so we've got that taken care of. I just want to make sure that I haven't missed any questions for anybody because we're down to less than a minute. So I'm going to say thank you to all of our guests and this evening. You know, trying to get a hold of that vaccine is really the difficult thing. And, you know, we'll probably get everybody together when we see the vaccine come out from AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, and those are more traditional vaccines than the ones that we're seeing right now. I want to thank all of our guests tonight, Dr. Sarah Conlon, Dr. Eric Yeager, Dr. Bertino, Keith Brown. We do have the State Health Department's website on our webpage. It's under links, so you can go there, look at that, see if you can get in and get your shot scheduled. And we want to thank all of you for joining us. Mask, hand washing, social distancing. Stay well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone.
You're all great. Thank you. I think they're gone.